Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It is episode 2670 of The Tom Woods Show. And what I want to share with you today is actually an appearance I made on The Bob Murphy Show just days ago. And we had a great conversation about a lot of topics that I know listeners of this show will find interesting. And this is the kind of banter Bob and I used to have on our old podcast, Contra Krugman. Some of you may remember that podcast. May it rest in peace. And so now you got more Woods and Murphy. So enjoy.
Well, Tom, welcome back to the Bob Murphy Show.
Thank you very much, Bob. Glad to be here.
I don't know how many times you've been on, but I do know, I see it every time I go to Dropbox to upload. You were the first episode of this podcast. I don't know if you even remember that.
I do remember that. And I'm very happy about that. Michael Bolden was the first guest on the Tom Woods Show because I wanted it to be not predictable. You know, there are obvious candidates for the first episode, right. But Michael's just a good guy and I like him a lot. And so I featured him. So, and he is very happy about that. So being the very first guest, it does mean something. You've come a long way since Old Woods. I don't know why you're regressing.
Well, I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel here. You know, it's the summer. People are the real guests are traveling. It's the summer, so you know how that goes. All right. Well, I was just jotting down notes, and my supporters group and stuff gave me some ideas. But here, I think the first thing I have to ask you is, I'm assuming you saw Scott Horton on Tucker Carlson recently.
I did.
I knew Scott knew a lot of stuff. I didn't know he could just sit there and go 3 hours like a James Michener novel, getting into I assume he pronounced their names correctly, all sorts of different guys. And yet I texted him and I said, that's the best I've ever seen you, where he struck the right balance of not losing the listener, but also showing like, oh, I totally know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's funny, he was coming off an appearance on another program. I'll just say on another program, not the Tom Woods Show, but where he was kind of unhappy with his performance. So he went into the Tucker thing a little bit concerned that maybe he might not come off well again. And instead, he did such a tremendous job. And so it's been great to see somebody like Scott come into more prominence, because we knew him when he was just slumming around with you and me. We knew how talented he was. And now it's been a long time coming, but it's great that the whole world sees it.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to just maybe speak a bit on that? Because I guess it's like Michael Malice and Dave Smith. Are there other people like that, were in these circles and then they kind of just were out there and they were doing media appearance and they kind of just were did they break the glass ceiling for, you get what I'm asking?
Yeah. I mean, they certainly are the obvious ones. I mean, there could be others, but in terms of my friends, and I mean, the three of them I would put, very much in that category. Yeah, they're way, it's been amazing to see it. And it's interesting to think about how they each did it, because they each did it differently. I mean, Malice has all his peculiarities and quirks, and showing up on Dave Rubin dressed like Tulsi Gabbard in the white suit and all that. And I mean, just oddball. And then when called on it, saying that she stole the look from him. Only he would do something like that, right? And so a host knows that if he has Malice on, it's not going to be boring. And then Dave, now that's not the only thing, but with Dave, it's not the only thing that he did a lot of debates, but that is a big thing, is that every opportunity he had to debate somebody, he took it, whether it was a formal debate on a stage or a podcast debate. He took that opportunity, which meant that he just got himself out there and out there and out there. And before you know it, he had reached some kind of critical mass with that. And now it's just crazy, man. He's been on everything. He's almost a household name at this point. He gets regularly denounced, which is a good sign that he's, he's doing things. And let me add, Bob, that I've seen him do stand-up several times in person. And I went with my wife and a few friends earlier this year. And he was just absolutely on top of his game, absolutely in command, in total command of that audience. And it was funny that the venue has like its own house comedian who tends to host these things. And then he brings out Rob, who then brings out Dave. But that guy, and then you see Dave, you realize, I understand why Dave is the headliner. You know, I mean, absolute command of that.
I not to do a pound sign me too, but or hashtag, I said pound sign. Remember how we used to call it a pound sign?
I do.
I did the exact same thing at the Boston, I forget what it was called, comedy club. And the exact same experience where, you know, the local guy comes out and he's doing sort of apolitical. He was talking about, you know, like, oh, I'm an Uber driver and here's some stories, you know, that kind of, it was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But it was like, yeah, if I went up to do stand-up, it probably would come off like that. And then, you know, by the time Dave gets out, they just kept upping the ante, and you could just see that, oh yeah, each person, like, you get, like you say, why the other people are the ones touring the country, and the other guys are just like the local, you know, sort of like warm the crowd up and then introduce the actual people who are there, you know, the headliners. So it's very good. Okay, so you know, even as I set up the question for you, I realized though, it's not so much that Scott just testified before Congress or, you know, was on Face the Nation or something. It's that, oh, he was on a really big podcast. But even that is like just showing how much our world has changed. You know what I mean? In other words, the premise of my original observation to you was, isn't it neat that we used to be in our own little world and now we're breaking into the mainstream? But it's almost like, no, because this new technology is allowing people from our world to break into the mainstream. Like, in other words, Tucker came from the mainstream and went over here, but you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's almost like what we define as the mainstream has itself changed.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, in a way, of course, like Face the Nation or Meet the Press or that sort of thing is what we would have considered to be the gold standard. But now I even wonder how many people are even watching these.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm not saying that. I'm not like taking back what I said. I'm realizing it's not so much that. How did he do it? Scott was able to leapfrog from mere podcasting into the big time. You know what I'm saying?
I totally agree with you. It's just I'm just sitting here marveling at it myself. That it's almost like I didn't even. Yeah, we've all commented on the rise of podcasting, but it's almost like I didn't even notice it happening. That, well, wait a minute, these were the iconic shows, or This Week with David Brinkley. You know, these were the iconic shows, and this was what defined the range of political opinion. And it's been routed. It's been absolutely routed. And I know we have, my goodness, I know we have good reason to be unhappy or dissatisfied. Believe me, ample reasons. And I'm going to have them until I drop dead. But I still feel like, despite that, I think it's incredible that we've lived to witness something of this scale happening before our eyes. Okay,
so. And this kind of sets up, I'm doing like a good news and bad news kind of thing. On the other hand, you know, as we're recording this, the people are reacting to the latest on the whole Epstein thing. And that's on the heels of the, you know, what happened with Iran. And obviously I know some of Trump's supporters were fine with that, but another segment weren't. But clearly a lot of his supporters were totally not on board with what's been going on with the Epstein stuff. And say what you will about it, but then the thing that is making the rounds that I was just looking at before we started recording here, Tom, were people's reactions to, you know, Trump sort of intervening at the round table discussion. Well, I don't know if it's a round table, table discussion, and, you know, say you guys are still talking about Epstein. And what I thought was interesting, I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but Sagar and Jetty was on Tucker,
yeah,
and reacting. I don't know if that clip had made it yet, but was reacting just to, in general, how the, you know, Trump administration is clearly just saying, hey, nothing to see here, move on. And I forget the exact way he put it, but it was something like, you know, because people are responding like, why don't they just come up with better lies, or why didn't they just like ignore it, or just, you know, say they were looking into it or something? Why are they like slapping us in the, and he said, because this isn't for us. This is a signal to the various powerful people that don't worry, you know, you're fine. And that, you know, that kind of made, so like Tucker was so like, and enthralled by that he made him say it again. And anyway, I thought that was a good point too, because yeah, with a lot of this, you know, the stuff you would say, like if you and I were the PR consultants or something and we were just being amoral and giving advice, we'd say, well, whatever you do, don't come out and act like, why do you guys even think this is a big deal? Like, that's not going to work.
Right.
So say, yeah, we're looking into it, or there's intelligent, whatever. Just, there's reasons, there's privacy issues, and some of the families have raised concern, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, so how do you feel about all that?
This is all instinct because there are people who know, have pieced together details that I haven't. But what I do know is that there were a lot of people who were in a position to at least not be grossly mistaken, who said, we need to release this Epstein list. Like there were, like J.D. Vance, multiple times, like even within the past week, J.D. Vance, or I know that the Pam Bondi thing is, I wasn't talking about the list, I was talking about the files in general. She was asked specifically about the list.
But I started it, but even there, I think going along with your point is, she didn't say, well, what do you mean list? I mean, there's a file. I'm not even sure there is a list. Right. You know what I mean? Like everyone knew what that meant, and they were certainly thinking it existed.
Right, right. And so you can come up, I wrote this in my email newsletter the other day, that there were numerous people, high up people, I believe Kash Patel himself possibly, who said, this thing has got to be made public. Donald Trump Jr. Was very enthusiastic about this list being made public, and now there is no list. Like this, if this were, I hate always bringing up the double standard thing, but could you imagine, Bob, if this were a Democrat administration and Joe Biden said there's no list? Now, it's true that, as you say, there are plenty of Trump people who are deeply unhappy about this, but it would be way worse than deeply unhappy.
Oh, I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, can't even imagine. So, but there are some Trump, like pro-Trump influencers who are either trying to say, like Ben Shapiro is trying to say, well, I guess we got this wrong because they looked into it and I trust Dan Bongino, and so I guess we got this wrong. Or people just overpromised, or they were conspiracy theorizing or whatever. And then you have the people who, they're too clever by half. They've always got some convoluted way in which a disaster is actually a good thing. So there was featured, it might have been on Alex Jones, but also some other outlets where it was, well, maybe there really is an Epstein list, but Trump wants to use it for his own purposes to blackmail the deep state. And I mean, there's no evidence for this whatsoever. There's no reason to think it. Hey, everybody, if you're worried, and you should be, about the value of your hard-earned savings getting eaten away by inflation, trade wars, or reckless Fed policy, it's time to secure and grow your wealth in something they can't inflate away, and that's gold. But a lot of gold owners just buy gold and then let it sit there collecting dust, and then they feel like they're missing out on the growth happening in other asset classes. That's why I lease my gold with Monetary Metals. I can earn a 4% annual yield paid in gold every single month while still owning my ounces. Again, the yield you earn is paid in ounces of physical gold, which you get in addition to any price appreciation from gold during the year, which, as you know, continues to break all-time highs in 2025. So join me and thousands of happy clients who are earning a gold income every single month. This is a no-brainer for those looking to earn an honest return in honest money. The Fed can print dollars, they can't print gold. Now's the time for you to start growing your wealth in ounces. Go to monetary-metals.com/woods to learn more. That's monetary-metals.com/woods.
Well, but Tom, what about the fact that the deep state's just been suffering loss after loss the last few weeks?
Yeah. How do you account for that other than he has the list?
Okay. So, but I mean, so beyond just, us sort of like, what the heck? But I guess where I'm going with this is as you know, I came out a few years ago strongly in support of Texas independence. I try to avoid the S word. And because I just thought, yeah, I can be all theoretical or whatever, but in terms of political action, okay, but Murphy, what do you want to do? That, hey, sending people to Washington does not seem like it's going to work. And so with this thing, I kept my mouth shut not because I was all gung-ho about the possible Trump administration 2.0, but I didn't want to be like a party pooper or something. And certainly now I'm not going around saying, aha, you idiots who supported Trump, even though there are plenty of people we know that are doing just that. Like, oh, what did you think was going to happen? Okay, putting all that aside, but I guess I'm saying beyond just the particulars of, oh, wow, I can't believe Tulsi flipped. I can't believe Dan Bongino flipped. I can't believe J.D. Vance. I can't believe Trump himself. Beyond that, it's like, okay, if this coalition of people who on paper, if it didn't work this time, he's a billionaire outsider.
Yeah.
So my point is, when would it ever work to say, why don't we, if we just could get the right people in and they would know that, oh, we mean business here and you better not, go back on your promises or we're going to vote you. Like, when is this ever going to work?
That's my favorite that they say. Oh, don't worry. We'll hold them accountable. How? What are you doing to hold them accountable?
So I guess where I'm going to say, so Bob, was there a question there? What does this mean? Like, are you, thinking your daughters are going to grow up in a thing that, the country splits apart? I mean, I don't, anyway.
Yeah, but I see the implicit question here, which I am very sympathetic to. I've thought exactly the same thing. Because, yes, I get that Trump's not a carbon copy of Woods and Murphy. But there are people who get appointed and platformed by Trump, Vance, and people in his circles whom I like very much. And that would not have happened under other Republicans or under Democrats. So there is that. And so if even now with people who made certain promises and they won't keep them, I mean, we know the way it never works the other way, that you vote for Joe Biden and then he gets in there and he becomes a non-interventionist. That never happens. It's that the people who slightly seem like they might believe in restraint get in there and you don't know where they're going to go from one day to the next. You don't know what they're up to. They won't rule anything out. You don't know where they're going. You look at the people they appoint. You say, there's no reason for them to appoint these people. So, I mean, at this point, in terms of the world my daughters are going to grow up in, the country my daughters are going to grow up in, I don't know how to predict that. Honestly, I don't. But it is part of the reason that my own emphasis has shifted a little bit, but also since COVID, in that, I do want to I want to inform people when I feel like I have an insight or I've gathered some information that most people might not have seen yet. I do want to communicate that to people. And I do want to fight for what's right. As much of a cliche as that is, I do want to do those things. But I also want to help people who already understand those things. I already understand that the Fed's a bad institution, that FDR was a bad president. Like I already know, I already have the whole program in my head. I think there's a lot that we can do, not to like fix the whole country. Forget that. That's way out of scale from what one person or group can do. We can help our own families and communities. And we can do that by putting our heads together. We have in our circles people who are very talented and smart. And if we share those talents and smarts, we can go places, at least privately. Like that is to say, we can live prosperous and healthy and fulfilled lives because we've put our heads together. Just last night, I have a program, my Tom Woods School of Life program. Last night, I led a parenting call on that because all parents face certain challenges. Johnny won't go to bed, or Susie won't eat her broccoli or whatever. But we, as dissidents, face additional challenges. Like I feel like every time I turn around, there's some institution in society that's undermining my parenting. Or Johnny comes home and says, well, why don't we eat X or inject Y or vote for candidate Z the way my friend's family does? So we face, so we had a roundtable conversation about these sorts of things. And I thought, now this is valuable. This doesn't have anything to do with electing a person to office, but it has to do with sharing smarts with each other. Like I have investors on there. Maybe Larry Lepard. He came on and gave a presentation to my people. He has a fund. I put some money in it. I checked the other day. I'm $180K up because I invested in Larry's fund that he presented to my community. So no, that doesn't affect the balance of power in the U.S. Senate at all. But it just made a bunch of my people a lot better off, in that way. So I in other words, I guess I've come to the conclusion that there's only so much I can do. Like, I think when you're young and naive, you think, well, if I write enough articles, one of them will get into the right hands and things will change. I'd still like to believe that. So I still do those things. I'm still waiting for that article to roll things back. But in the meantime, I feel like I'm doing something that has actually real life consequences, maybe not for the whole country, but for my small circle.
Okay. Yeah. And why don't we, I was going to ask you about that stuff. So why don't we just jump right into that topic? I was going to say, I remember years ago when you were starting to make the transition, because it's interesting. You were at one point in Austro-libertarian circles, one of the most credentialed people, with, where you had gone to school and everything. And of course, you're a very polished speaker and whatnot, best-selling books. So, in other words, you had the academic credentials, but also, you were a popular writer and whatnot, successful. And then you started transitioning into doing, online ways to make money online. Let's just to put a broad category on it. And I remember I was talking to you and I said something along the lines of, I mean, that's cool. And I want you to do that, but I don't want you to lose, like you're so valuable over here with your historian hat. I don't know if you remember me saying that to you.
Yeah, no, I do. And so I surprised myself when I wrote the book on COVID, Diary of a Psychosis, because I really thought, Bob, that I was all done. Because I don't know how you feel about writing books, but I find it exhausting. I find it absolutely exhausting. Now, not that it's not fulfilling, but geez, like the pace I was going at in the old days, like I was putting out one a year, sometimes more. It was like Beatles albums, like what? This cannot be sustained, and I didn't think I could do it, but so I am still kind of like out there. I mean, I feel like I still do more libertarian stuff than most people, like that. I have the 3 times a week show. I have the every single weekday newsletter. I did write the book. I've written all the ebooks. I mean, tomsfreebooks.com has a lot of free material.
Right.
So, but I got to let me give you an example of something that brings me satisfaction that I think is doing good in the world. So I have a mastermind that meets in person 3 times a year, and it's just cool people. They're all Bob Murphy fans. They're all good, smart, accomplished people. And we meet and we have the greatest time because we all get along so well. But we work. We work for a couple of days, and everybody sits on a hot seat and says, all right, well, here's the status of my business. Here are my goals. Here are my successes, challenges, obstacles. And then we just throw it open and people are just throwing ideas and strategies at that person. We record it because you can't take notes fast enough to get it all down. And this makes a huge difference for these people, a huge difference. But yet we have a guy in there who is so wealthy and his business is so successful that it is very obvious he does not need this group. Now, we have done great wonders for him and he's very happy about it. But at this point, he doesn't need the group. He's there, I think, I haven't asked him, but he's there because he just loves to help people. He has all the money he ever need.
What is it, George Soros? He might be spying on you.
Yeah. Well, he has his own plane. Some of our group have flown on his plane on a trip to Panama recently. But he's just a cool guy. Like you don't get to his position without acquiring some knowledge, and he just likes to share it. And so, like, I feel like that's a great thing that we're doing something like this. That it's social. There's great camaraderie, but also there are other masterminds in the world. It's true, but in mine, if you were to say something like, I want my business to become profitable enough that my wife can stay home with the kids, no one's going to look at you funny. Like, wait a minute, do you think women should be in the... Like, you don't have to worry that you're going to say the wrong thing or whatever. You can be yourself and learn and prosper and succeed. And so that's a case of taking the knowledge that our people have that's just sitting there in their brains, but I'm trying to take it out and make it actionable in the world. Do something with it. So I've got the in-person mastermind. I have an online one. I opened up an author academy for people who want to write books. I have a lot of experience with that. And so I think these kind of things they make life not boring for me. Like I very much believe in all the things that I've written about and taught over the years, but I like occasionally creating a program for authors who, would like to, I'm going to show you how to conceptualize, write, edit, publish, and market that book because I know all about it because I've done it 13 times. I like doing that. And also things that I've had some success at. I like to teach people how to do it. I do very well just with an email newsletter. So I made a whole program teaching people this is exactly what I'm doing. And I'm not making it up because you see me in your inbox every day doing exactly this.
Yeah. I noticed. I mean, I thought when I was 22 or something, I thought I was going to be a college professor for the rest of it. I just figured, I'm going to be writing books and peer-reviewed articles. And then soon into that, I was like, no, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be like. And that, and then I had some time where I was largely like in the think tank world. And then it was like, oh yeah, if you could write an op-ed once a week, that would be amazing. I was like, I could write one every 2 hours. What are you talking about? This is crazy, And so then like getting in the financial sector was great because it was like, all right, there's some like if we don't do something, we're going to go out of business. And good. Like that keeps us busy, So anyway, I'm just saying like we've had different paths, but there's pros and cons. Like, yeah, let's the journal article where the editor sent it to Paul Samuelson and he marked it up. And like, that's one of my proudest things in my life. But on the other hand, there's no way that I would want to just be in academia right now. So
yeah, and that's the thing that I like the in-person teaching thing, and I like direct interaction with people, and I really genuinely do miss that. But academia, when you or I were in it, it had its problems, and we were well aware of them. But now I feel like it's so toxic, I just couldn't be part of it anymore. Even if I wanted to, so it's kind of fortuitous that it turned out this way that I'm not in it.
Yeah. And also, I think, it's almost like I can't believe how good my career or job, whatever you want to call it, like my ability to earn income or something. Like I can, if I want to geek out and go do a 2-hour podcast episode on some arcane thing, I can do that. Like no one's stopping me from doing that. So I can still teach. It's just, I don't have to teach a bunch of business majors supply and demand curves and they're looking at me like I want to jump out of a window. Because I have to take this class in order to get my business degree, and I have to teach from this textbook because, kind of that's the standard, blah, blah, blah. So,
yeah. And this is what's expected. I just I want to balance the nerdiness with practicality because I think there's room for both. I'm happy that, like with the School of Life thing, like I have people in there who teach about, family finance and or investing or how to get started with homeschooling, especially when you think you can't do it, or how to inoculate your kids against gender theory, and then just go on. I mean, think of all the ways that life is made difficult for us by the political regime we live under, on all levels, and on every one of those, I'm bringing our heads together. We're putting our heads together and trying to fix that. At least for those of us who are in the community. And I feel like that is entirely compatible with everything I've done up to now. And it makes me happy. But then I want to, like, it makes me happy also, though, to know that the most listened to Bob Murphy Show episode is you and Jeff Herbner debating or discussing interest theory.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, folks. I don't know if I said that on the show, but yes, that is true. I was trying to get an advertiser or something, so I was going and downloading the thing, and I was like, I'm curious, and I sort by downloads or whatever, and yep, the number one episode, folks. The COVID ones were big, and I did a series on Klaus Schwab, and so those ones were up there, for obvious reasons. But yeah, the number one was me talking to Jeff Herbner, and that's he claims his bots work, but I really don't think he knows how to program his microwave clock. I don't think there's a bunch of Jeff Herbner bots doing that. So,
hey, everybody, I have a statistic that stops people in their tracks. Nearly half of American adults say they would suffer financial hardship within 6 months if they lost their primary income earner. Now, if that stat hits close to home, you're not alone, and you're not out of options. Because thankfully, Policy Genius makes finding and buying life insurance simple. In a few clicks, you can find your lowest price among America's top insurers. And that means your loved ones have a financial safety net they can use in case something happens to you, whether to cover debts and routine expenses, or even to invest the money so it can grow over time. In fact, with Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. It's an easy way to protect the people you love and feel good about the future. The team of licensed agents at Policy Genius will walk you through the process step by step. If you need help, they'll answer all your questions, handle paperwork, and serve as your advocate. No guesswork with Policy Genius. Your options like coverage amounts, prices, terms are all laid out clearly. Policy Genius has thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best policy fit for their needs. Secure your family's future with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com to compare free life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Well, anyway, so that's kind of where I am. But like, let me give another quick one. I love my mastermind, and so one of the things I was doing, like earlier this year, every year, Jenna and I go to the U.S. Virgin Islands, and we like St. John, which I first learned about from Tom DiLorenzo at the Mises Institute. St. John is the least populous of the 3 Virgin Islands. Like the others are about 40,000 people each. St. John is not even 5,000. And not even one human lifetime ago, there was no electricity on St. John. Like this thing has come from nowhere into being a flourishing, cute, little, wonderful place with restaurants and beaches and this and that. And so we go there every year. And I was sitting there on the beach, and it's just like paradise. And I was saying to Jenna, I think, maybe someday it might be nice to bring the mastermind here. And then I thought, wait a minute, I run the mastermind. We're going to do that next year when we come. Why am I waiting for this? So it reminds me of back in my professor days. I was sitting in like a student lounge or something, and there was a retarded student in there, and some of the other students were like mocking him. And part of me, I was so young as a professor, I thought, well, I hope an authority figure comes along and puts this right. And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm an authority figure. So I told them to go beat it. But anyway, so in February of 2026, my group is going down, and I still have a couple of openings, but my group's going down to St. John, and we're going to, I'm going to take them to my favorite restaurants there. We're going to get a ship captain to take us island hopping. And I've got Doc Dixon, the magician, flying down just to do close-up magic for my very, very small, maybe 10 people. I'm flying him all the way down there to do that. I mean, that is a cool experience.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be said for, hey, I learned a lot in Tom's mastermind, or I earned an extra 6 figures this year because of Tom's mastermind. And those are all great, and I will never tire of hearing testimonials like that. But also, it's just like, this is a cool experience for like-minded people to just enjoy together and get away from the madness of things, And that's also, by the way, one of the great things about the cruise you and I used to do, Bob, was that, obviously some of that was political. We would talk about Krugman and we would talk about economics, but a lot of it was just people enjoying each other's company. We could put all this aside and pretend for a week like we lived in a normal world.
Yeah. Those were good times.
I remember. Do you remember one of the times you and I, it might have been the very first one we did. You and I met to just kind of get caught up on what was going on. And we both kind of agreed, I think this is the best thing we've ever done.
I don't know if I said that, but I remember saying something like, I think this is working and we're doing what we said we were going to do. I remember saying something like that. I'm always like what could go wrong?
Yeah.
So, okay. So I am going to force you now, though, to be a historian because you do have all that training and legacy. So there was a guy recently, and you saw it too. I didn't dig the thing back up, but he said, it was on Twitter/X. By the way, I thought I will be waterboarded before I start calling it X, and I can feel that 2 years from now, I'm going to be calling it X.
I know, I'm almost there, Bob.
This is so stupid. Somebody observed, I don't know, within the last 6 months that, there's SpaceX, and that I didn't realize that X was his thing. And then I was like, that makes more sense. I just thought he called it X for no reason.
Yeah. I don't know. Still not quite enough.
I'm not saying that's a slam dunk. I'm just saying, to me, I was like, okay.
Well, I can sort of, yeah. No, I see what you're saying.
All right. So anyway, and maybe to everyone else that was so obvious, but it's like, I think I was a teenager, Tom, when I said, it's like a giving of thanks. That's why they call it. To me, it was just Thanksgiving. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah. Right.
Okay. So anyway, and this guy said something along the lines of it was right when like people were mocking Dave for, I thought it was going to be World War III. It was right around that period. And some guy comes out and he's like, what the heck happened to the conservative movement? It's like now half of them are a bunch of whiny, anti-war leftists. Like what happened? In other words, like he was lamenting back in my day. I mean, we all wanted to bomb the crap out of these towel heads. I'm putting words in his mouth. He wasn't being that much of a jerk about it, but that's clearly where he was coming from. Like Tucker Carlson, what the heck happened to that guy? I mean, he used to be a big supporter of the United States, and now he's sympathizing with every American enemy. What is going on with the right? So, do you remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, I do. I responded to that tweet.
Okay, yeah. So do you want to, set us straight here, Tom? What's going on?
All right, well, I have a chapter in, I'll never earn another dollar in royalties on 33 questions about American history, so I'll plug that, even though it benefits me financially in no way. But in my book, by the way, it's also the worst book title in the history of mankind, 33 questions about American history you're not supposed to ask. Why didn't somebody stop me, Bob? Really? So there should have been an intervention.
Yes.
Anyway, well, there's a chapter in there on this exact question about, because the implication here is that the anti-war cause is really the cause of the left. But no, and again, the thing is, you get hung up on defining what the left is, because there are people on the hard left who would say, well, yeah, I know Hillary Clinton is for war, but I'm not part of that. Right. I can sympathize with those people. But I would say that, like Mao Zedong did not think war was a terrible injustice that had to be avoided. I mean, I think he, like Napoleon, understood that war could have positively revolutionary consequences because of the upheaval that was involved in carrying it on. But I think people are getting this idea from the Vietnam War because they saw, apparently left-wingers in the streets protesting it. Now, of course, when the military draft was taken away, the protests stopped, which I don't necessarily say that makes them bad people. I wouldn't have wanted to be dragged off into that conflict either, but it would be nice if their principles had gone a little bit beyond that. But really, it was the establishment left that got the country into that war. The initial interventions were, I guess the really initial ones would be back under Eisenhower, but still, JFK, who was like, I don't know, today we would consider him like a centrist of some kind, I guess, but LBJ, LBJ was the author of The War on Poverty and The Great Society. And, so it was those people who really pushed that. But even leaving Vietnam aside, the point is, if I go back to, let's say, the war of the Spanish-American War, progressive, were generally supported that because Spain was backward and, needed to be taught a lesson. World War I, overwhelming. Yes, I know Randolph Bourne said war is the health of the state, and I know Jane Addams was against it, but that's exactly it, that you can count on one hand the number of people on the left who were genuinely, and in a principled way, against it. Overwhelmingly, they were not against it. The social gospel preachers were not against it. Richard Gamble, were you ever colleagues with Richard Gamble? Oh, okay, no, but he teaches at Hillsdale. You went to Hillsdale as a student. That's what I was thinking. But Richard Gamble had a book called The War for Righteousness about the social gospel clergy. And they basically acted like the American soldier was the crucified Christ. And it was the whole thing. The devil are the Germans, and it was all that. They were not peaceniks calling for non-intervention. The intellectuals like John Dewey and others from the New Republic magazine, Walter Lippmann, they thought that the war would be a great opportunity to expand the state domestically because people would become accustomed to state intervention in the economy. They would drift away from their old dumb superstitions about private property. This was the mainstream left opinion about this. And then I don't know if you know,
Butler Schaefer had I reviewed it a long time ago on that, saying all the people are like, hey, if we can mobilize the economy for the war effort, well, then why wouldn't we also mobilize and centralize all the industry for, social ends too? And so again, this is World War I we're talking about, folks.
Yeah, no, that is exactly right. That's exactly right. And by and large, when we think about the Korean War was overwhelmingly bipartisan. There was the hard left like I.F. Stone who was against it. and there was the right that was, in a feeble way kind of against it. But in general, that was very mainstream. The Arthur Schlesinger Jr. Democrats were like vital center people that were all in a kind of a social democratic center, and we we have a foreign policy that's more or less bipartisan. So this is not right, that and then I would also say Russell Kirk, who he wrote The Conservative Mind in 1953. It was a seminal work in the development of American conservatism. And he said that George H.W. Bush should be strung up on the White House lawn for war crimes. Oh, that sounds like something AOC would say. I mean, I can't even have this conversation with you. I mean, the idea of the conservative is that we are concerned with conserving what is immediate and finite and close to us. So the idea that I have an opinion on Ukraine, or, it reminds me of the great Bill Kaufman, who is unclassifiable ideologically, but who, at Ron Paul's rally for the Republic in 2008, gave the best speech of the day. And I will say, tooting my own horn, that Dr. Paul said to me, I want to have a really solid anti-war speaker. Whom do you recommend? And I said, Bill Kaufman, which is a name no one else was going to recommend. But thank goodness that name jumped into my head, because he did such a fantastic job. And he basically said, you can't care about Baghdad and your own backyard. John McCain chooses Baghdad. We take our stand in our backyards, on our front porches, in rock and roll clubs and volunteer fire departments. And he goes on and on and on about all these little, beautiful little things in this wonderful country of mine that is a different country from the America on TV, with the sloganeering presidents and the bombs dropping. There's another quieter America, and I belong to that. And I think that's where the conservative truly belongs.
So I noticed through all that, you skipped over World War, the 30s and World War II. And then, so what's interesting is there was this other guy, Josh Hammer, that Dave Smith debated once. And then I think I don't know if he already did it or it's imminent. He's going to debate him again. And that guy was coming out swinging, and he was denouncing the isolationist branch of America First. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he tiptoed up to almost saying they're desecrating that, or they're perverting that phrase or something, And then I know Ben Shapiro, when the Iran strikes were happening, was aghast at the idea that America First might mean non-intervention in foreign policy. It's like, what? When we, demanded unconditional surrender from Japan, was that not America First? It was like, no, it clearly wasn't. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So,
right.
I mean, that's like someone saying, saying the New Deal means the gold standards. I can't even come up with an analogy of how nutty that is.
Yeah. No, well, I skipped over because I thought, I think it's obvious the progressives were in favor of fighting the Nazis, so like they didn't have to be coerced into being brought on board. Although you could find people, who had left-wing sympathies in the America First Committee. There's no doubt about that, right and left-wing. But you mentioned Ben Shapiro. When Ben Shapiro was not initially a Trump supporter, he was anti-Trump.
Right.
And one of the things he said was that America First is an anti-Semitic slogan. So now he's going to come along and tell us exactly what it means. I thought you didn't like it.
Right. Oh, to be clear, I'm not saying, wait a minute, where was the left in the 30s? What I meant, though, is this idea that if you're a right-wing person, you're definitely a hawk and you want to bomb everybody. I'm saying, no, that's not exactly. Historically that a lot of it. Anyway, can you just... So, I mean, America First, where that came from, and they were saying in the 30s, like, we do not want to go in another of these crazy European bloodbaths, like America First.
Yes, that was exactly the position. And then the thought, and Truman later wrote a book about this that's highly valuable, about what exactly happened in that war. But the idea was, especially after there was open hostility between the Soviet Union and Germany. I mean, well, let them go at it then. The totalitarian behemoths, let them do that. But this, so this is and you say this, and it's like, and I have friends, like dear friends, who say, well, this is a case of a war that just had to be fought out. Like Paul Gottfried holds that view. This one just had to be done. But I think at the same time, somebody like a Paul Gottfried is at least willing to listen to you when you say, how could a war that ends with 50 to 60 million deaths have actually been the best possible outcome? Like, we're not even allowed to consider
Right.
that there might have been a better way. And by the way, a funny thing about a late friend of mine, I wrote a book. Now all my books are downstairs on another shelf, but books that I wrote. But I collaborated with a guy named Murray Polner on an anti-war anthology called We Who Dared to Say No to War. And what was fun about this anthology was he was very way on the left. And we just thought it would be neat. We met on Long Island somehow, and we thought it'd be neat to do an anti-war collection together. And we would each pick oddball things that the other one would never pick, but that we're both okay with. Our rule was no fascists and no commies. But otherwise, you can... So, Lou Rockwell is in there. He wouldn't be in the typical anti-war anthology, but I made sure he was in there, stuff like that. Well, anyway, I got this email one day from Murray saying, now look, Tom, we do have some differences between us. And I think maybe in the cases of the Civil War and World War II, I can make a good case for the need for violence in those situations. So we may want to introduce an editorial note that there is some difference between us on these matters. And I said, Murray, I'm happy to do whatever makes you comfortable on this. And then a little while later...
He was a fan of General Lee.
Yeah. A little while later, I got a voicemail on my phone, and it was Murray. And he said, you know what, Tom, to hell with all the damn wars. And he hung up. So he didn't want to make the change after all.
Yeah. But just to be clear, though, I'm not even saying like, oh, so if you consider yourself on the right, then it has to be that you would want the U.S. to sail World War II. My point is simply, it's not like a test of your manhood or something. Like, if you're a tough guy, then, if you have a lot of testosterone, then of course you want to go bomb people. Like in other words, you could be, it's not just like, oh, you could be on the right and like vanilla ice cream or chocolate. No, it's that for some people, because they're on the right and they have those principles, and, it's not like the founding fathers, that this was alien to them, the idea that the U.S. shouldn't be getting involved in European wars. So anyway, I'm just saying, like, what I'm reacting to is not that this guy that we're talking about here was for the U.S. sending cruise missiles or sending bombers to Iran. That's not my point. It's that he couldn't understand how could someone on the right even be arguing that we shouldn't be helping Israel in this matter. Like, that's what was shocking to me, like the historical ignorance on his part.
Yeah, the guy would be scandalized by everybody and everything, pretty much.
So maybe the last one I just have for you here is, I think you had it in your newsletter recently that Oren McIntyre was talking about the public intellectual and all that. And it dovetailed. I was going to just say, besides everything else that's annoying me about the current situation, is that when I was younger, and you watch Crossfire, it was like Pat Buchanan and Michael Kinsley going at it, and they would have, obviously I sided with Buchanan on most stuff except for like NAFTA or whatever. And even now, I would be way more sympathetic to him than I was at the time. But Michael Kinsley would come up with, he'd have good reasons, for why he was saying what he was saying. And now it's just ridiculous. Like you know what I mean? Like I mean this with all sincerity. I was so much looking forward to Douglas Murray debating Dave Smith on Joe Rogan's show. And I was just aghast at, I told people it was like when Tyson and Holyfield fought when I was younger, obviously, and I got the pay-per-view, my friends all came over. And then when Tyson just starts biting his ear, I was so mad at him. Like, what are you doing? You ruined our night. And that's
right. I know. We've anticipated this for so long.
And the reason it's not, people think, oh, it's because you wanted Dave to, because I had heard all of Dave's talking points and he was just, buzzsawing people. And I thought, okay, if there's a flaw in what he's saying, or he like uses this talking point, but really he's taking it out of context, or, maybe he just doesn't know, then okay, well then Douglas Murray's going to be the one to set him straight. And that's not at all what happened. So anyway, I'm just lamenting, I'm kind of just venting here, but do you get what I'm saying? That the public discourse, I don't know if it's just the short attention spans or what, but it seemed like the debates, I mean, we're not fans of Bill Buckley, but he was an erudite, blah, 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 and it'd be like, oh, okay, you watch him put on a show and he's going against somebody. That's an interesting exchange of ideas.
Right. Yeah. I mean, his firing line debates So he had a TV show called Firing Line on PBS, and it was a half-hour weekly show. But then every once in a while, he would do a 2-hour 3-on-3 debate, and it would and he would match it up really well. So it'd be him against each team would have in effect a Bill Buckley kind of person. Then maybe a professor, an academic on each side, or a journalist on each side, and then a Hollywood actor. So he would have like Dennis Weaver against Charlton Heston, but they would be debating as a team. And these were great. And I remember recommending to Austin Peterson that Judge Napolitano, with his Freedom Watch show, should bring that back, because there's no TV like that anymore. And nobody does anything like that anymore. That would be fantastic. You bring the most bloodthirsty neocons and then the best non-interventionists, and you have them in a structured debate. Who in his right mind wouldn't watch that? But that's not what we have. You're right. That is not what we have these days, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I guess what's the last thing? Why is that? I mean, it's the kind of thing. Well, gee, if the market's not providing it, what's going on? I mean, I know Zero Hedge. They have a debate series that they're doing, and I've done a couple.
True.
I'm doing
Zero Hedge is good.
Yeah,
that's true.
So I mean, I guess is that just the thing? Well, yep. If the people want, but I guess partly I'm wondering, is it that the people don't want that, or this last one, and then I'll let you go, Tom. I'm wondering. It occurred to me that, is it because there are people that are not free market libertarian types, and it's guys like who are erudite and whatever, and they're like Matt Iglesias and Ezra Klein and people like that, and you and I, Tom, slammed the door on them years ago, so maybe it's our own fault.
No. This is what I think's happening.
Okay.
And by the way, I would be very sad if Gene Epstein wrote to me and said, Tom, we've been friends for many years, and you're talking about debates.
Yeah. Thank you. Good catch.
And you didn't even mention the Soho Forum, so I will mention the SohoForum.org.
Yeah, thank you. Good catch. I would have sat up tonight at 2:00 in the morning. I can't believe we didn't say that.
Yep, I know. So we would have both gotten the email. We would have deserved it. But the Soho Forum, the SohoForum.org, is a place where in-person debates take place. You've done one of them, Bob. I tried to do one, but the debate opponent didn't show up.
It shows how intimidating you are.
Yeah, that's why. But really, it generates a lot of light, and not just heat. I went to a debate on Israel-Palestine, and it was extremely informative. Extremely. I don't know how many minds were changed, but I don't know of anybody who regretted going. So those things do happen, but the reason I think we don't see more of it is that you and I and the people on our side would like to do it, but there isn't, we're excited to debate because it means more people will hear what we're saying. Why would the Douglas Murray side be that excited to debate? In general, their view is if we can remove these people's opinions from society, that would be best. So they have no excitement about debating us.
Okay, yeah. To them, it's like, why would I platform this person with the wrong view? Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
Whereas when we are the degenerate needing to be platformed, we favor it,
Right. I got it. Okay, fair enough. Okay, well, thank you, Tom. Where should people go? What's your latest thing you want to point people to?
Well, for the Bob Murphy audience, a lot of them are going to already have my history courses. I could give 2 of them away. Woodshistory.com. I have 2 U.S. history courses that you can get for free. You used to have to get them just by paying for Liberty Classroom, but now you can get the history courses for free, and they're pretty good, by the way. They're pretty good. They'll keep your kids from coming back communist from the college. But for any of you business people out there, you would love our mastermind group. It's one of my proudest things that we built this. I don't want to call it a fraternity because women are allowed in it, but let's just say de facto it has kind of turned out that way. Not entirely, but for the most part. But it's a wonderful group of people. We do really we have great experiences together. We learn a lot together. I don't think I've ever really promoted it on a podcast before, but the website is woodsmastermind.com if you think you might be somebody who belongs in that room.
Okay, well, folks, my guest has been Tom Woods. Tom, thanks for your time here and everything you've been doing.
Always a pleasure, Bob. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you not too distant future at the Mises Institute.
Yes, exactly. And thank you, folks, for tuning in. See you next time.
All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that. And remember, come to the Ron Paul barbecue. It's his 90th birthday. It's a chance to celebrate a great man with a whole bunch of people you're going to enjoy hanging out with, like Dave Smith and Scott Horton and a whole bunch more. You'll find them all at ronpaulbbq.com, and I'll see you there. Thanks for listening.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.